Hello, everyone, and welcome to my episode number 10 of the Game Out Talk podcast. My guest today is Alex Beddows. So, hi, Alex. How does it feel to sit on the other side of the mic now?
It's interesting. It's weird. I mean, I think everyone knows on my one anyway. I talk a shit ton anyway, so it's like this. I'm probably just going to be talking just as much as I usually do.
Okay, so it's not that different, but I'm asking the questions now. So that's the only difference, and you need to answer them. So,
Well,
give the listeners a short introduction of yourself. What are you doing? How old are you? And these important questions.
so my name's Alex Beddows. I am a senior environment artist at Counterplay Games. I've only been there for a month so far. I'm also the learning content manager at ArtStation. Been doing that since about February. Before then, I've worked in iGaming and mobile games and AA and indie. Um, and I also run a podcast. I obviously run a GDD podcast. So I'm kind of like to keep busy, like to be doing, have my hands in lots of pies. Um, a lot of people probably know my art from, I do a lot of material art. So my portfolio is
Hmm.
full of mat balls. So, but I always say, like, yeah, I'm an environment artist first, material artist second.
Okay, but you're currently focusing more on materials, as you can see in in your ArtStation portfolio, I guess.
It's to be honest, it's more that I don't have a lot of spare time for personal art.
Hmm.
Obviously juggling counterplay and art station and the podcast and then all the other stuff. Materials are quite a like although I have a lot of them in my portfolio, the reason is they are kind of tidy little projects. Environments are a massive investment. Like
Yeah,
I have to set aside, I'd say like at least 3 months of my time to
yeah.
dedicate to the environments. Apart from the most recent one, the Stairway to Heaven, I did that over the Christmas period, and that was quite refreshing because it was uh, it was only using Quixel assets. I didn't have to make all the assets. I could just focus on lighting and composition and just like nailing the reference. So I actually quite enjoyed that one. That wasn't a too much of a burden. But yeah, I don't really focus on in terms of career wise. I don't focus that much on materials. Like it's just that in my spare time, they make for nice small projects that only take like a week, couple of weeks to
Yeah, and
wrap up.
you gotta see if the result pretty fast when
Yeah.
working with stuff. So, how did you start out? Tell me something about your career progression. When did you start, and what was your first job in the industry?
Um. So I've had a weird. So I've not had a very conventional career, I suppose, is to put it lightly. I early on, I left. I didn't go to university. I finished college. I had a very bad experience with college. Um, didn't get much value from it from the people teaching me. So I was actually, during that time, it was me and my peers kind of being competitive with each other. We taught ourselves a lot of the software, and one of us would like make a water shader, and then I'd be like, oh, that's cool. Okay, I'm gonna make a fire shader, and then they make like a prop. Then we kept one upping each other, and that's how we learned. Um, During my time at college, I actually got a freelance gig for AR, so augmented reality. Someone needed like some 3D assets for setting up like booths for conferences, and I did that at college. And when I left college, I was playing with the idea of professional. I was still playing like sort of semi-pro rugby. So I kind
Mhm.
of was focused on that at the time, and my sort of game art career took the back seat during that time. But when I got to like, I was about 20 years old, I realized, I'm not gonna make a full time living out of rugby. It was just, it was one of them. Um, so I sort of refocused back onto game art. Um, and I suppose my first actual industry job was working at a serious game studio. Basically, it's using game tech for non-entertainment purposes. So, for example, it's a quite a fulfilling job because there's some cool stuff we made. Like we had to make a mobile game in Unity, which was basically for helping children with mental disabilities like navigate the household and understand what's dangerous and what's not, and they sort of gamified that learning experience. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of stuff we did. I did that for a couple of years, moved into mobile games. I bounced around a couple of studios. Did iGaming was a funny one. So iGaming is like casino games, slot games. And at the time, I needed work. I was 22, and I was like, I needed a job. And this came up, but at first I was like, okay, I'll take it so I can find something else. Um, it actually turned out to be quite fun. It was like, when you hear slot games, you think, oh, it's just going to all be gold and really
Yeah, yeah.
trashy,
Lots
Vegasy.
of money and
Yeah, but
yeah.
it's not like that. It's actually you have to be quite creative. It's like it's a lot more closer to the mobile indie scene. So I ended up sticking with that for quite a few years. Um, yeah, that was some of my initial careers, and I really enjoyed them, and I think them that like pathway I took in to get here, it's probably made me a little bit more of a rounded artist. I know there's like the conventional path is like you go to education, university, you graduate
Yeah.
university, you get a
Yeah.
postgrad, and then you get junior, and then you're away. Um, I'm quite grateful I've done all these different things because I feel like I've been able to sidestep into different fields. So, say for example, when I went to Decagum, all of my previous AR and VR experience came in really handy for working on Deco because we worked on quite a few VR projects.
Mm-hmm.
So things have a weird way of coming full circle and becoming useful. Um, Same as when in serious games, which is a lot of mobile UI design. We
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
we got our station actually needed me to do some like UI design as part of my art test, and all them skills I spent like a year and a half, 2 years developing came full circle and they're useful today. So I'm really glad I did all that.
Okay. So how would you say that the networking helps you in the in this time, in this period, to get your first jobs or to develop yourself as an artist as well?
And anyone has been so I gave quite a few uni talks this year, and there's a slide I have
Mm-hmm.
where basically I think the term networking is complete bullshit. Like there's this ridiculous notion that it's just smoozing on LinkedIn, and it really isn't. There's something so during my time at Live Five where I was principal, there's a lot of like client work. You have to. My role was more than an artist. It was, I met the clients quite a lot. Flew out to like Malta to speak to clients and meet them. And it was quite frustrating sometimes. Sometimes you just disagreed, and I'd leave the meetings and I'd be very frustrated. And my if I see you, my old CEO Lloyd, if he ever listens to this, he's gonna laugh because him and my creative director used to just go Alex, 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 relationships. They just say that. That's it. And it's like, and it's. I used to hate it because I used to be like, no, it's not relationship. Like, no, they need to understand that what they're choosing to do is wrong. And they're like, Alex, Alex, it doesn't matter. It's just about relationships. And they said that to me I was at Live Fire for about a year and a half, and I must have heard that like at least every week, every other day, like they'd say that to me. And at the time, it's frustrating, but now I look back, it's like that's if you want to like boil networking down to something, it's building relationships. Um, I have some very close friendships with artists from the community. That's networking, like talking to artists and making friends and actual and like have an actual relationship with somebody. As in, like they you have a connection in some way. It's not just someone added on LinkedIn. Like if you add someone on LinkedIn, explain why you're adding them. Like talk to them, get to know them, so that there's a genuine connection between you and the other person. So that when the day comes that you need to actually leverage your network,
Mm-hmm.
you're not just some random person who added them on LinkedIn. It's so frustrating when I see just random students.
Just add you.
Yeah, I normally engage them in the conversation. If I get added and I don't hear from them in a couple of days, I'll inbox them and say, "Hey, how are you? I noticed you added me. Is there anything I can help you with?" I've done it less now. I've got a lot more connections now on LinkedIn, so I do it a little bit less because it's quite time consuming. But I don't know. I think it's important to know that you have to build. That's all the networking is that you're just building relationships. Like for example, me and you now, we
Yeah.
after this podcast and we finish, we'll have a genuine relationship. We've had a long
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. We talked like an hour about stuff.
Yeah, and it's exactly like the podcast. The podcast is formed like it's become like kind of a networking tool on steroids. Like,
Yeah, a
everyone just comes
relationship
on.
builder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All these people I've got to speak to, and I would never have spoken to
Yeah.
without the podcast.
Yeah.
Um,
Same goes for me.
Obviously, that's not saying everyone go start a podcast and that's how you do it. Like, at
Yeah,
least
it's the
you have
other
to be
side.
creative.
Yeah.
Kem, who started Experience Points, he's probably grew his network exponentially, and he's done that by starting an article website.
Mm.
Um, all these things, you have to be creative with how you do it, if you really want to, go far. But almost ignore the word networking, replace networking with relationships, and I think the whole mindset shifts into a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. So, are you still part of the Decagon or of the Decagon community? I think so, right?
Um, nope. I stepped down at the time while I was a decker, and I was looking. I wanted it to be like in house or working on something a little bit more full time. Decker had a great time. I enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, you have been a lead artist, right?
Yeah, I was lead.
Hmm.
So I stepped down as lead to be just a senior artist, and with juggling ArtStation and Counterplay, I just there was basically next to no time, so I sort of just stepped down altogether from working with Decagon. Completely of my own choice. Like I had a great time there. They were a blast to work with and made some long term friends.
Hmm.
But I just wanted to sort of go a slightly different route in my career. I wanted to be on a project and actually in the trenches working on it. Um, Outsourcing is a bit more. You touch a lot of projects, but you don't really have a hold on them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you.
So yeah, that's my time with that's
Okay.
yeah Deco.
Do you have any development plans for yourself in the future?
Uh, a few. It's hard. Like your focus shifts as you move between project to project. Um, it's hard. Like I mean, you'll know yourself when you're working on like if you're knee deep in a game production,
Yeah.
your whole mindset shifts to that, and that's all your development wants to be. You want to be your best you could possibly be at that. Um, but a lot of the stuff I said this when I was speaking to Josh Lidge is a lot of the stuff I want to develop is probably more of my interpersonal skills. Um, just people skills, working with people, being a bit easier to work with. Um, like when I'm working with people who are like minded like me, it's easy. Like we just bounce off each other. It's a blast. Like I have we have like a group Discord of good friends who met up a few times from like the UK,
Hmm.
and with them guys, it's like we're completely honest with each other, um, and we'll say what needs to be said. And when I'm working with them types of people, it's easy. Like I just say what I think. If something's not right, I'll say it. If they don't think something's right, they just say it, and it's no feelings get hurt. Um, However, that doesn't translate to every single artist. Some artists just don't like to work like that. Some artists take it the wrong way,
Hmm.
and I'm probably thinking I'm trying to develop just how I deal with different types of people,
Oh yeah.
rather than just like
Yeah.
discounting it. Oh yeah, they just don't work my way, and that's their problem. It's a me problem. Um, so that's where a lot of my focus is at the moment. Just trying to be really aware of who I'm working with and how I'm coming across. Like for example, um, we're having it on. I apologize to a colleague I was working with because I read the messages. Like at the time, I wasn't really thinking anything of it, but then I read like the conversation back a couple of days later, and I was like, yeah, I come off really rude. Okay, I'm actually gonna just put an apology out there because
Yeah. Yeah.
although at the time I don't mean to be. Like sometimes when you're being blunt or you're just being honest, it does not read well in text. And that is one of the things that's a bit of a problem, I suppose, with like this whole because I work remotely on both jobs.
Okay.
Text things don't come across great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Tone, all that kind of stuff. In a podcast like this with me and you, it's like everything I say and what you say, we there's
We
underlying
get it.
tones to everything.
Yeah, I get what you're saying with the tone of your voice, for example. But when you're texting, everything is gone.
Yeah, and it's again, remembering who you're dealing with, and that's something I think is really not spoken about enough. We focus so much on hard skills, and don't get me wrong, there's some hard skills I want to learn. I want to really dig into Houdini.
Hmm.
Um, I want to get a better grasp of lighting and Unreal. There's these hard skills, but they're kind of at this point feel arbitrary. In terms of like what I'm going to bring to the table in my day job. What's going to aid more in the long term? Like me learning Houdini and probably only using it like a grand total like a day in the whole production, or developing my soft skills and my ability to work as a team. Which one's going to impact the production more? It's going to be the soft skills. But
Yeah.
a lot of the focus really when you in a public space, when you talk to people on social media, on ArtStation, on Discord, it's always the hard skills that people focus
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Um, especially like later on, like when you've sort of once you establish your like your career, your hard skills got you there, but your soft skills will help you stay there. It feels
Mm.
like.
Yeah. This is a good quote. Yeah.
But I agree- that's it. That's your quote for the podcast.
I'm gonna get this one, yeah, tattooed on my right arm. Every time I want to learn a new tutorial, I'm gonna watch it. And so, would you say that you can be a perfectionist as well as a contracted freelancer? Like when you work for Decogon, you always have a deadline because, yeah, stuff needs to be done to a certain point. And how does this affect your work when working? Yeah, always crunching against the deadline. So,
Um,
can let me hear your thoughts on this one as being a lead or having been a lead.
there's a couple of elements to it. I'm trying to think the best way to tackle that is the first part is when, and this is more for inexperienced artists. I mean, with Decagon, you're dealing with a lot of juniors. Um, and this is true for I suppose any studio. This isn't a unique thing to outsource, but it's like being aware of what you're making contextually. Like the context of what you're making is really important. You know, I think artists who come in and they just want like to be a, you know, they just want the asset. Give me the asset now to work on the asset, and they get tunnel vision on it.
Yeah.
They always treat it as like it's there's a phrase I used to say all the time, which was like, you know, not everything's a hero prop, not everything's an ArtStation post.
Mm.
And it's easy to treat props like that when you have no context. But with context, if it's like, oh, actually, like I don't know what's the case. Like Last of Us, like, oh, okay, this is actually a piece of wall that the player uses as cover, so therefore the camera's really close to it. Okay, I need to spend a bit more time and give this a little bit more love. Um, versus, oh, this is off in the distance and the player never interacts with it. Okay, then I need to treat this as what it is, which is a background prop, a clutter prop. In which case, you don't spend all your time on it. And the only way you can work like that is if you get the context to what you're making. Um, and this is more for, like I said, this is more for like juniors who come in and they want to sort of show what they can do. Um, but being aware of what you're making and how much the player sees it, and how much how much screen space is going to take up, will dictate how much time you should spend on it, and that will normally dictate the deadline. So, like, if you have a really tight deadline, you need to make your life as easy as possible. So, like, rather than diving headfirst and trying to like just crunch your way through it, ask the questions of like, you know, what, how does the player work with this? How much in the, you know, how much screen space does it take up? Because that deadline might not seem so unreasonable if you realize that this is actually just a quick
Mm.
asset that doesn't need much love. Um, the other part to it is, this is a hard one to articulate. You have to be you have to understand, and again, this isn't this isn't unique to. I think this seems more evident with an outsourced studio because you deal with so many clients.
Yeah.
But this is the same with game studio. There will be design decisions you don't like. Um, you don't like the way they want the material to look. You don't like the design decision for a piece of trim. You don't like the fact they want to remove that asset. But it isn't your idea. It isn't yours to, so you're a tool to help make the idea come to life. And the sooner you can sort of let go of the ownership of that thing, and you don't get upset when things get cut or things get changed or things don't go the way you want, the easier your time's going to be. Um, I know, and I'm guilty of this. Like I get very frustrated when a client makes when I was a deco, and a client was like, "Okay, we want it like this," and I'll be like, "That's such a bad idea. You just shouldn't do that. Do it like this is how we should do it." And it's like, well, no, that's what they want. Like that's what we do.
Mm, yeah.
And it took a while to get used, to accept that. But once you do, like, it just makes the job so much easier to roll the punches because there's always going to be change. There's always going to be iteration and you sort of have to get as a production artist, you just have to get comfortable with that. That's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, especially for outsourcing where there are lots of different, yeah,
Mm.
things the client wants to see.
Yeah, they and you're dealing with like when in a studio, your client is your like I suppose your art director or creative director, and there's one
Yeah,
product. There's one product you're dealing with,
yeah,
so you sort of learn. This is where the challenge comes in. In a studio environment, you learn who you're working with and who your client is, and you get to know them in such a way where you can start to learn from mistakes made previously because they like this a certain way, so we're going to purposely do this. With Deco, if you're juggling on like 14, 15 projects at once, it's like your clients are constantly changing. So you're constantly in that learning experience of, okay, what does this person want? Okay, we're done with this client this month, on to a new one. All right, well, okay, what does this person want? And they're going to want it a slightly different way. So you have to roll with the punches a lot more than you do in a production studio.
So, what are your main benefits, or what did you take away from the lead position? Is this something you had to learn, or did it
Um,
just come regular to yourself?
so um, there's
Because
a
it's always a difference being an artist or being a lead artist. Did you have any time to work on props on yourself, for example?
So, firstly, I guess did I have to learn anything to be a lead? I've always in rugby, I've always been the person to talk a lot, to have something to say, to
Yeah, to communicate between other
yeah.
people.
I mean, when I
Yeah.
joined Deco, I was just a production artist, and it just so happened, I was working very closely with the current leads and helping them, taking off pressure off them where I can, giving feedback to people. Like just they post something, and we had different time zones. So if the lead was in another time zone and someone needed feedback now, I'll just jump in and say my 2 cents. And that's
Mm.
how I got to lead. It's just like, okay, you're actually already doing a lot of stuff, so you may as well be a lead. Um, it's very natural to me now. I didn't really realize this until I spoke to Josh about this. And this is so what I'm about to say is not a regret. It's just looking back in hindsight. It's maybe aware of this, and it's that I shouldn't have taken the lead role. I took it for the wrong reasons. Being a lead when I was being when we were speaking to Josh about this, it was like you have to take you being a lead is very selfless. It's about the project. It's not about you. When you finish, if you're a lead for 2 years and you finish, you're gonna have very little to show for it compared to a production artist who has 5 scenes and 18 props and 5 materials they've made. Um, and when this opportunity came up and I was offered a lead role, the first thing that came to mind was, oh, actually, it's gonna be quite good for my career. And it was like, I got a great insight. I learned a great deal, but I don't think I was a good lead at the time. I very much wanted to make art. I wanted to put my stamp on things. I wanted to do things a certain way. And as a lead, your job is to enable people and is to make sure the production runs smoothly, not do the production how you want to do it. Um, and yeah, I just look back and I go, with hindsight, I'm like, I'm loving being a production artist again. A Counterplay, just a breath of fresh air. And it's because when I took the lead role, I weren't taking it because I wanted to make help this project or anything like that. It was I wanted to help my career, and that's still you just should. That's not a good That's not a good enough reason to take it. Um, and like I said, this is not a reflection of Decagon or anything like that. Like, they were a blast to work with, and it made my life super easy. But just for me personally, looking back, it's like I shouldn't have done that. But that being said, I learned a great deal. I learned to look at things from a different perspective. Take the artist hat off and think as a manager we have deadlines, we have managing artists, making sure they have work, all of these time scales, all these skills which I would never have really used. So it's kind of like, okay, great. I've dabbled in. I did principal art as well at Live Five. It's like, okay, I've dabbled in both them fields, and they're cool. I've learned a lot. I just want to be like a production artist for like the rest of my 20s, and like just I have so much to learn. There's like I need to be a really good production artist before I even think about any other roles, because it's
Yeah,
kind of
you're already a senior, you know, Alex. But
well,
there is so much stuff left to learn, right?
well, I think it's being okay with it as well. Like that's where like I say life. This sounds really like philosophical, but like life's just got
Uh,
easier since I've gone okay with just not knowing everything. Like
mm,
during my time at Deco, I probably put myself under too much pressure to like just have answers. And this is, and again, I put this down to the guys I hang out with in the Discord. Is they come from different walks of life. Some are weapon artists, some are material artists, some are environment artists, some are props, and they all have their expertise. Um, but they also have places they don't know. They have things they don't know about. And because we're such good friends, we're completely open with talking with each other and being vulnerable to say, okay, you know what? I know this is probably super basic, but I don't know how to do this. And no one ridicules anyone. There's none of like, oh, you should know this. It's just, okay, here's the answer.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, and since like being okay with that, and that's how translated actually into like my current job with ArtStation, with the people I interact with on social media. I'm completely fine being the ignorant person in a room who doesn't know and wants to learn. Um, and it's just so much more comfortable, sort of just working now, having that mentality.
Yeah, you take the pressure away
Hmm.
to have to know everything.
Well, I mean, you know what it's like. You do a podcast. Like every single person you speak to has something to say of value. Like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't. It's like how to explain it. Everyone knows something you don't, and it's like
Mm,
even non-artists, man. There's something interesting. I'm actually considering with my podcast, like getting non-art people on, because they just say weird little things that you're like, holy shit, I never
thought
had
about
that
it. Yeah,
framework like that, and
yeah,
it just yeah, I'm finding it a lot easier just my day to day since just being like, okay, here's what I do know, and I mean, don't get me wrong, the stuff I do know, like I will put my flag in the ground and say this. I trust me, I know this. This is the thing I do have the knowledge on. But
yeah,
the stuff that I don't, I'm the first to put my hands up and go, you know what? I'm a fucking idiot. Just tell me how to do it or tell me what I'm doing wrong and I'll correct it.
yeah. And I think it's completely normal for an artist to do stuff wrong or to make mistakes. I think that's we are humans, you know.
And then again, this is where it comes down to like having good. So, okay, so for example, last week had my break the build moment. And it was a really stupid error. It was ridiculous. And at first, I was getting ready to like, give myself a kicking about it. And then it's just like speaking to some good friends, and they're like, dude, I mean, experienced guys with like over 20, 15 years experience going, I did that like, 2 weeks ago. It's fine. Like, it doesn't matter. And it's like, yeah, you are going to make mistakes. And if you didn't make mistakes, it probably means you're not pushing yourself. If you just operate in exactly what you know perfectly and you never get anything wrong, you're probably not pushing the boundaries very much of what you can do.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Um, Both artistically and professionally, if I only stuck to exactly what I knew in my professional job, like, okay, I know how to, like, say, make materials, and that's all I do. I'm lucky at Counterplay because I get to do level art, assets, um, composition stuff, materials. If I just stuck just to materials, I'd be a very one dimensional person. Um, and obviously, some people do have, but the thing is, well, some people do want to be masters in their field.
Yeah,
I like doing lots of different things. I like to be busy, and I don't know. I don't think I have the patience to be a real master in my discipline. So that's something to be said. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing to like be on one type of art, like say material art or lighting art. That's not a bad thing. You get to be the absolute master in that particular area. that just doesn't fit into what I like to do. I like to know bits about everything so that when I have a conversation with somebody, I can participate in the conversation even though I don't know everything.
Yeah, that's what Lucas Stratman also said in my last podcast. You need a team that consists of both types of people. Like, as you said, the really hard down guy who knows everything about materials, who's a really crack in his field, and you also need people who, yeah, who see it like you, who know a bit about everything, but have a field where they're pretty strong in.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's difficult though, isn't it? Because like with the experts, it's like you need mediators between the experts,
Hmm.
um, because the expert will have like all this context how they solve problems on their particular thing. Now, them solutions could probably translate to a lot of different disciplines, but the other disciplines are ingrained in, like, they all have their experts kind of really head in the trenches trying to fix problems. Those people who kind of mediate between all of them are able to take bits from one area, move them over to the other area, and like they kind of move the knowledge around. That's probably the best way to describe it. They move the knowledge around, and share it. And I mean, you do get some people like, a great example is Ben Wilson. Dude's like one of the smartest material artists I know. Like, speaking to him most days on like some of the stuff he's working on, he does a great job in mediating between the material art to the environment art.
Hmm.
He draws the connection. It isn't just all in material art. These people are the ones which I think help studios grow in the long term as well. Having those people who are helping everybody in the studio get a little bit better, by just sharing knowledge. That's super important to me.
So, as you being also a podcast host, what are your main takeaways like being a podcaster? So, especially, what did you learn talking to the folks, and also what did you take away as an artist?
Um, Context, I guess, is the word I'd say. I go from it. It's like when I know I've said this plenty of times before. The podcast is a selfish endeavor for me. It's it's for me to talk to people who I'm interested in
Hmm.
and learn something from. Now, what's been interesting is I've had lots of environment artists on, and they all look at environment art slightly differently, and they all have different perspectives, and they have different takes on things, and they struggle with different things. And it's helped round my perspective off a little bit in terms of like, so I don't just get like, I don't want to be in an echo chamber where everyone around me says the same stuff as me, so therefore I get like a confirmation bias. It's like speaking to these different people from different walks of life, and they come at me with a different perspective. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't think of it that way. That's an interesting way to think about it. Okay, and then we'll like go into it deeper. And that's just helped round me out as a person quite well. Like, and again, it's still I've still got a lot of work to do, but
Hmm.
people just, and on life as well. Like, Josh is a great example. He's spoken about just his general, stuff that he goes through in life that translates into art, and it's just eye opening for me. As an artist, again, it's not. I don't think directly, not much in terms of my art, like just because a lot of the
Yeah,
stuff they talk about is more, again, it's more soft skills. I mean, but actually, I'm
yeah.
curious. What about you though? Like, do you feel like you had that as well from like doing a podcast? Is it the
Um,
same?
I don't think so. Yeah, as you said, I'm more talking about not just the tech, like the workflows and stuff. I'm talking more about, yeah, the soft skills, how the industry is working, how people are communicating with each other, how they see things, and yeah. So like
One,
for an art side, it's not that I didn't benefit that much. But like for a person on a personal side, I think it helped me to grow a lot.
I think it helps as well. You just think like as a host, I guess. Yeah, I think you'll agree. It's being able to, so it's getting past the superficial stuff, like the surface level. Like, when I speak to an environment artist now, I've had like over 20 environment artists on, and
Yeah,
if I ask them all just environment art questions, it
yeah.
gets pretty dull pretty quick. I think just me being able to think of questions and things I want to know about someone, which you have like, you get into like the actually what makes them a person.
Yeah.
Because everyone uses similar tools, but it's like, how does that person interact with that tool, and like what makes them special? Like if I have Eric Wiley on and Enrico Tamakand, it's like they're both material artists. They both do environment art. They're not the same person. They're not the same creature. It's like they tackle things differently. They think about things differently, and it's getting to that's the which is fun for me. Is like, and where I get a lot of benefit is understanding what makes them tick and how they work. Because once you get to that, it's like, okay, is there anything they're doing right now in terms of their perspective or how they tackle things that I could leverage to make me a better artist? Um, and that skill of just being able to like look at somebody and actually get, like I said, discard the superficial stuff and get to what makes them a person and what makes them an artist
Yeah.
is at first it was quite difficult. Like my initial podcast were like super, um, I'd say dull and like repetitive because I was asking the same questions. But as I've gotten like more used to it and I've started getting into deeper questions and like unpacking things, it's gone a lot more beneficial to me. I'd say. Don't know about the listener. Like I said, it's a selfish thing, but I've definitely found
Yeah.
it more useful.
Yeah. And I think I need to learn this by myself as well to, yeah, to get more into the core of what makes a person and not just how he works, how he do stuff. And because mostly they are all working with the same tools and having the same workflow, but how they see things is pretty more interesting.
Yeah, it's how they perceive. Like, and also there's something else to it in terms of 10 years ago. I think the industry, people talking about their experiences was a little bit more secretive, and it still happens now. There's some companies who are like, okay, we'd rather you don't go on the podcast uh, without like our okay or anything like that. And it's like when people are able to just speak as themselves, like speak as autonomous beings and like have their say as an individual without like their opinions being casted as their studios. It's like you get some really interesting stuff. Like um, what's a good example of this? I suppose like with when Josh was talking about. In fact, no, I bet one when I had Tim last week with tech art. Tech art doesn't get shared around a great deal. It's not as in the open as like conventional environment art or material art. But getting them to sort of speak on behalf of themselves rather than their experience from the studios, it's so beneficial because you just get to you get away because everything has context when you take into a studio like tech art, material art. All of it can get contextualized in a different way if you put it into a studio. But outside the studio, just as a topic in itself, we can get people talking about that. You find some real hidden gems in there in the way they perceive things, how they solve problems, um, and kind of just the way they look at the world and like how what is a problem. Even like that's another thing. Some people don't see things as problems.
Mhm.
My, me and Mike we talk. Me and Mike. So Michael McKinsey is a good friend. Works at
Yeah.
Beddows. Very close personal friend, and we're opposite ends of the spectrum. He like to me a problem is the tool isn't working,
Mhm.
and I'm like I want the tool to work so I can make my art. He sees that as an opportunity. He just wants to get in and figure out how the tool works and remake it and make it better. And like to me, that's I'm like that sounds like hell. I just want to make the art, and he's like, no, I want to understand how things work, and like his brain works differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, maybe I need to adopt some of that perspective because that will help me. And it's vice versa for him. He probably needs to probably sometimes think, oh, maybe I need to let go and like just learn to just make the art rather than focus on the tools and solving on problems. We both had something to learn from each other. That's that's like to me absolute gold. Like that's the magic of the podcast and stuff is when you're both getting something out of the conversation. Like not just me getting something or not just him getting something. Like we're both learning from each other because obviously we're two different people and we think in different ways. It's it's great. And they're the ones where I finished. I don't know what this is like for you. Like you might be able to elaborate on this a bit more. You finish some podcasts full of energy, like you're
Mhm.
amped up because you just learned so much and you just got a whole new perspective. I mean, do you get that sometimes?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes when I finish a podcast, it's really like a mind refresher. So I was like, after the podcast last time with Hannah Watts, I was like, oh, this is how she sees the different things. And I was like, I never thought about this in this way. And it I in the next time that some problem occurs, I will tackle this differently, and I think this will help me as well.
Yeah, Hannah's great, so she's another good friend. It's like
Yeah.
it's also how they, because there's stuff surrounding the craft of art which affects our ability to work. When you step away from your desk, what are you doing? How much
Yeah.
time do you spend away from your desk? And Hannah's a great advocate for, she is a great example for this. I know she did, like, before all the lockdown stuff, great social life. She did all, like, she stayed in good shape. She did like yoga and all that kind of stuff. She had her way of crafting her time, and that was another interesting thing. Like, we're not talking about art when we're talking about that sort of stuff. You're not talking about art. We're not talking about how to make environment art or materials. We're talking about how we craft our day to day life.
Yeah,
And
around our art, right?
yeah, and it's like, me, her, and Mike speak quite a lot, and it's like she had her way of crafting her day to day. I have my way. So, for example, them two are night owls. Like, they work quite late, but they
Hmm.
get up a little bit later. Whereas me, I'm up at 5 a.m. every day, but I'm in bed by like 11. So, there's two different perspectives there. And then there's, like, the way you structure your days, when you work, when you don't, what you're doing outside of work, how much work you're actually doing. All of us had different perspectives. And it's like, again, none of them are probably perfect, and all of them could probably be refined a bit from taking bits from each of us. But
Hmm.
them sort of conversations are great, and I think probably out of all of us, Hannah had the best, like, work life balance. She made sure she did things. She, for example, she did like traditional painting, like on a not tradition.
Ah.
She does like life drawing classes. She draws on a
Hmm.
tablet, just to get away from to just make sure them skills are sharpened. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's great. Like, yeah, that's a good point. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should be doing that a little bit. Maybe I should try to do something completely away from my
Your
my
craft.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's interesting. Maybe I should look into that. That's where all of this comes in, where you're just speaking to people, and you get these perspectives away from the really obvious, how did you make your material.
And one topic I never talk about that much is, um, do you play video games that much anymore? Like before starting working on video games, compared to now?
So
Like,
before I started working, I played a shit ton of games. I played too
mm-hmm,
much.
mm-hmm.
Um, Early on in my career, I played too much games, and not enough time on my personal craft. I've probably gone the other end now. So I don't doesn't know I'm married. The biggest fractious part of our relationship, and the part that always comes up in terms of like arguments, is I find it very difficult just to turn my PC off and go sit and watch TV. So I
Ah,
turn my
same
PC off and
same
go watch
goes for
TV.
me. Yeah, same goes for me.
Um, and when I'm away from my PC and I'm not talking to people, I'm normally thinking. And when I'm thinking, I can be a really miserable prick when I want to be. Like, I'll be driving for, like, I'll be going to my parents' house or something. I'll be driving, and I'll drive in silence, and it probably looks like I'm in a really bad mood, and it's not. I'm thinking about what I'm going to
Stuff.
do when I get back to my desk.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm playing games more now. I'm trying to, like, I'm obviously balancing like R Station and Counterplay, and I'm, you know very aware that it's easy to burn yourself out. I do have quite a high, like, work bandwidth. I can work for quite a while. I'm the type of person who sits at a desk for 16 hours and works, but I'm not really working for 16 hours. I'm probably working
Yeah.
more for like 12 or
Mm-hmm.
10.
I know. Yeah, I know, man.
And yeah, and that
So many
time,
other
like,
stuff going on.
yeah, but it's like, it's kind of, I go for quantity over quality in terms of my time and workload.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But I'm like, okay, that isn't great for my interpersonal relationships, because it means I'm spending a lot of time on my desk rather than with my wife, or I'm not just switching off and playing. Because during that time, it'd be like, if you're doing environment art, I'll spend too much time each day just zooming around the environment and looking at the environment rather than actually doing anything. And maybe it's like, okay, maybe I should just focus more for that hour, and then I could spend an hour playing games.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
get
again,
distracted.
the close friends, like I mentioned, the close friendship circle I have are professionals of artists who also are aware of this, and they're the first to be like, dude, just come play games. Like, you've been working all day, just come play games. Maybe you need this. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. And Ben's the best. Ben, like, we speak, so he's just convinced me to reinstall League of Legends, just son of a bitch. And it's like, he'd be like, oh, you need, just come play. You've been working all day. Just play a game. And he'll twist my arm a little bit, and I'm like, all right, fine, I will. And then I'll have a good time. And the next day, I'm more rejuvenated and I'm fresher. It's like, although I'm aware that it's an issue that I probably work too much around and play games and watch movies or whatever. But I have very good friends around me helping manage that.
Okay. Yeah, this is pretty important, I guess. That your friend circle is also another thing that is, yeah,
Oh, it's
that needs.
essential. I wouldn't be where I
Yeah,
am today without them. Um,
yeah,
there's, I mean, I'll even shout them out. People like Jay, Rick, Kieran, John, Joe, Mike, Hannah, like Jeremy, Ben, all these guys who are close enough friends with me to, one, support me when I need support, call me out when I'm doing stupid shit, help me when I need help, like be a friend when I need a friend, like, and they're all professionals, they're all like-minded people. Like, that's the important bit. Like, they are all like-minded people who want to help and see me develop. And like, something I had to do earlier on in my career when I was playing too much games and I sort of stagnated a bit. The guys I was hanging around with and I was talking to were just not good for me. They were, none of them were like career people,
mm,
and
hmm,
none of them were artists. They really get the drive, and I
hmm,
let their
goals.
mentalities kind of sip into my mentality. And it was like,
Yeah,
I had to just cut. I essentially had to cut a majority of my friends out of my life, because all of them we spoke on the internet, our internet friends I play games with. It's like I had to cut them out of my life because I was just falling down a rabbit hole of, like birds of a feather flock together, like that old phrase. It was like that. But once I met people like Jeremy and all these other guys I previously mentioned, you're around positive people who, when they get opportunities, they do cool shit, and then you get amped up because they did cool shit, so you want to do cool shit, and you have this back and forth, and you kind of like snowball affect each other.
yeah, growing together.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, if it weren't for them, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Without them helping and supporting me, and and I support them, we support each other. But it's grossly underrated having like-minded people around you who actually want the best for you. That's the important bit. It's like, you want the best for each other, which
Yeah,
doesn't mean you just tell them their work's good every time they show you something, even if it's trash. Um, I remember I put a snow shader up, and I had to redo it because the first time I posted it, everybody, all of them got in touch and were like, "That's not really
mm.
your standards. You might want to re-render that or look at that." And I'm
Yeah,
like, "Ah, shit, you're right."
but that's how you grow.
Yeah, and they're happy. They're happy to tell me shit I don't want to hear because they
Yeah.
they want the best for me, and that's the important bit. Is they actually want the best for you as a person.
All right. So, as you being the learning content manager at ArtStation, can you give me a short, yeah, just a short advice for people who want to put a portfolio on it and some like general portfolio presentation or having a CV on your portfolio?
Um, I suppose with a portfolio, and I'm using me, like, I'm just going to use my portfolio as a, because this is, I did it with mine. I treat every piece for, like, has an objective reason. I'm checking a box. Um, so like the safe house scene, I was like, okay, I need to show storytelling and propping ability, and I wanted to focus on lighting a little bit more. So I was like, check, did that. Worked on the snow scene. Right, I want to show that I can do an outdoor environment, and I want to show some technical skill using shaders. Check, did that. The Cerberus scene is like, it was, I want to show that I can take a concept and replicate a concept like for like and capture the mood. It weren't about the props, it weren't about anything like that. It was just a concept to replicate the mood. Check, did that. All the materials, like, every single one, I'm trying to try out new pipelines, do stuff I haven't done before. And all of this is in the aim of answering questions. When someone comes to my portfolio, I'd like to hope I've answered every question. They go, They don't need to ask, can this guy do organic materials? Can he do junk piles? Can he do really micro detailed materials? Can he light a scene? Can he do outdoor scenes? Can he do cluttered scenes? I've answered all these questions without them ever having to talk to me. And that's what you've got to bear in mind is someone looks at your portfolio and they have to ask you follow-up questions to figure out if you could do something. You know what other personal projects you need to do to fill up your portfolio.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
as I mean, see, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. Like being active on your. So this is. I said this. My presentation I give to the student to universities, like I made that in 2019. So this isn't because I work for ArtStation, but ArtStation gives most of the tools you need to showcase yourself as an artist. It gives you a blog section, be active in it, show work in progresses, all that kind of stuff. The store, like, just put stuff on there. Put your projects on there because you know what? I put all my materials on for free, for example. If
Yeah, I saw it.
anyone ever had a doubt on like, can this guy do like how good is he? How complex is
Yeah,
he? They
get
can
it.
download any of these materials and see my workflow. And they
Hmm.
get a sense for me as an artist. Um, your about page, you know, you put your CV on there. Nobody has. There's no follow up stuff. As long as they've got my art station, they have everything they need because it has my email, my LinkedIn, social media, all the software I can use. Your art station has everything it needs in order for you to get a job. The question is how high quality stuff is on there. Have you got a well written CV? Is it well formatted? Is your portfolio showcasing you in the best possible light? Um, do you do extracurricular stuff on your blog to sort of show you as a person and give us? And podcasts are a great example. Um, I've heard, for example, people. This is really weird. Some I'm not going to name names, but someone who came on a podcast applied for a studio, and the studio listened to their podcast as a to try and get an idea for the person,
Oh, this is
and
crazy.
and it
This
worked in
is
their
super
favor.
good.
But it
Yeah.
works in their favor. And it's like it's that is the extracurricular stuff. Write articles, write blogs. Like Kieran Goodson's great for this. He just writes thought pieces on his blog. Anyone who comes to that portfolio to try and get a sense for Kieran, instantly they come to the blog, they get a sense for him, and he's a thinking person. He's thinking past the art, and like they get a sense for him. Um, Outside of that, like there's not. You shouldn't really. You don't need anything out. You don't need any extra stuff. Like obviously marketing yourself well, having good following base so that there's nothing better than for an artist. I've had CVs come on my desk and we'll be looking over them, and someone will go next to me, go, "Oh, I recognize that guy's work. I've seen that on our station." Instantly, I remember that person for a reason. In my head, I'm like, "Oh, my colleague knows him. Interested." So having a good
Hmm.
following, like, it's not so. Our station is in a social media, and it's easy to sort of go, "Oh, it doesn't matter about the followers. Like, it's not. It's not about that." You're right. It isn't. But people knowing who you are prior to you applying for places, recognizing your work, being in challenges. For example, the Cyberpunk challenge is great. There's
Oh yeah.
every artist I know on there that I had to do a judge. I judged for it.
Yeah.
If I ever had that come on my, if I ever get that CV land on my desk and I check that portfolio, I'm like, oh, I remember judging this guy's work. Oh, okay. Instantly, there's a connection there, and
Hmm.
that person I'll remember over the exact same version of him, but someone else. Like
Yeah.
all this extracurricular stuff is super important, just so that your name is known in the industry. It's a small industry; everyone knows everyone. So the sooner you can get like in that circle of knowing people, a lot easier life becomes.
So just be active and put yourself out there, right?
Yeah, because man, this is such a saturated
Free.
job market. It's the this for every job there's like 100 artists, and that's like being modest. And if all of you, the thing to bear in mind is all of you are probably at a similar level. So it's like, okay, obviously the art is crucial. The art is the most important thing. But if you have person A and person B who are exactly equal on art levels, what's going to pip the other one ahead of the other? Is it going
Hmm.
to be the fact you have someone on your blog? Is it the fact that someone on your store? Is it the fact that you've got like, people know who you are? All these little 1% things can help you just push you that little bit ahead of your competition. It's not the most important thing. The most important thing is good art. Like nothing trumps that. You could have the most trash portfolio layout. You could have nothing on your blogs, nothing on your store, one follower. But if you have the best art, that automatically wins most of the time. But that's not the case most of the time. Most of the time, there's a big group of artists who are all of similar levels, and we have to pick one out of that like 20. And if it's the person you just happen to remember because your colleagues recommended them, or it's somebody who had a really well written blog and you have a good sense in how they articulate ideas, it's like great. That person gets a job because I just know them a little bit better. That's
Hmm.
how like close it is.
Yeah. So I think everything you do extra on your portfolio can just help you, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah.
It
Articles,
there's
anything.
not nothing negative about it, so it just helps you.
That's the way to think about it. It's like anything on there. What's it saying about you? Are you
Yeah.
answering another question? You know, do walkthroughs. I did a walkthrough of my space material. That actually ended up helping somebody. Like that's the other thing as well. Is being somebody of use within the community, like Chem's, and Jeremy. Like they help the community. People know them because they're helping people,
Yeah.
and people appreciate that. And it speaks volumes for you as a character. You're investing your spare time to just help people, and then as an employer, imagine how my mindset is. Jesus, look what he's doing for strangers. Imagine what he'll do for our studio. That's kind
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
that's the step you take.
It's deep. This is a deep quote. Yeah.
But all I can say is, like, just wrap up the art station thing. Just
Yeah.
be on there and just like go through your page one by one. Your store, your blog, your about, and just would ask yourself,
Yeah.
am I
Cultivate
answering all
it.
the
Yeah.
questions? Yeah, yeah. On your
Yeah.
CV, have I do? Does the recruiter have to send me an email to ask a couple of extra questions to get some more information, or do they have all the information they need? And if you answer all that sort of stuff, you should be set.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, Alex. I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much for being on my show, and I think the listener can benefit pretty huge from your talk. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I've really enjoyed it.
So maybe we can maybe arrange it the other way around someday,
Yeah, for sure,
and
man.
we'll see.
Yep, we'll organise
All
it.
right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Peace out, guys.